the facility and the equipment itself, and maybe even the lease that is in place for the business, how does that affect what a buyer is willing to pay?
The facility side is one that's not appreciated enough. A well-run facility that is clean, that doesn't need a lot of what we call TIs or tenant improvements, works in the favor of the seller. A buyer will pay a premium for that. The way the buyers basically calculate what they're willing to pay for a business is they will look at the earnings and they will put a multiplier on that. Then they have to look at any additional capital that the business needs. So for example, if the facility is a little run down and it needs $250,000 in basically upgrades to get it to a level where the buyer would either be really proud of the facility or importantly make sure that it's at the safety standards that they really require, that factors into what they're willing to pay. So they actually have a calculation to say, if we're going to buy this business for $3 million and we have to put in an additional $250,000, that basically their return on capital goes down because of the additional $250,000 that they have to spend. So the facility is a really critical one. And when we work with clients in terms of understanding is their business ready to sell, we definitely do a deep dive on the facility side. And the other one is looking at that lease. Is the lease buyer ready, if you will? In other words, can the lease be assigned by the seller to the buyer with the landlord's permission? Usually what I recommend is that the seller has even a decent, never mind a good relationship with their landlord, is to actually engage the landlord prior to going to market. And I know in some cases that's not feasible because of the relationship and they're worried about people knowing, etc. And understand where it's possible, it's actually a bonus. Involve the landlord as early as possible. If real estate is owned, what's really critical there is to make sure that an up-to-date assessment of the real estate is actually done. The buyer cares about that. They want to see that. Whether they're going to purchase the real estate or the seller is going to retain the real estate, they want to make sure they understand what today's market rate is for that real estate. And the other critical aspect is they want to make sure that on the financials they're looking at, that there is a fair market lease rate charged against the business. In other words, if the lease rate is charged at $5,000 a month on the historical financials, but once the buyer buys the business, the seller is going to retain the real estate and wants $10,000, well, obviously that's a $5,000 hit per month for the buyer. That's not amenable. That basically means their earnings are going to go down by $5,000 a month times 12 months, $60,000 a year. They're going to want to price that into the deal.